Hello and welcome to the Auto Ethnographer. I'm John Stech, the host on this journey. Every week, we travel the globe to bring you stories about the impact of culture on the global automotive industry. Get out your passport, fasten your seatbelt, and let's get started on this week's episode. Hello, and welcome to the first episode of the Auto Ethnographer. My name is John Stech, and I will be your host on this exciting journey today and on very many more in the future. The autoethnographer is dedicated towards looking at and studying culture across the automotive industry. What makes different cultures tick and what makes different cultures work and frankly not work sometimes across the globe in an industry that is so large and seemingly monolithic. Yet, when you scratch the surface, you find out that in every location around the world, it works slightly differently because of the local culture. What we'll do on the auto ethnographer is between myself and many guests, quite interesting guests, we will have a conversation about their experiences in these different countries around the world. We will touch practically every continent on the planet and have exciting conversations about culture and about how this impacts their work in the auto industry in that particular location. Now, we're going to talk to people who have come from the headquarters and are essentially expats living in a foreign land. But perhaps even more interesting, we're going to have conversations with people who are from a particular country, who are hosting those expats and working for a foreign brand that is operating in their country, and how they navigate that communication with a foreign headquarters whose culture is undoubtedly very different from their own. So those are the conversations, and those are the types of people that we're going to talk to. The people that I'm trying to reach with this podcast that I hope will find this really interesting are going to be experts, people who are out there, who are professionals working internationally. And it could be the auto industry, but it could also be something very different because, in a way, business is business in many ways. And, you know, cultural interaction is going to be cultural interaction. So this is for the travelers, but this is also focused on the people who are working in a particular market, who have this, let's say, foreign brand coming into their country where they are the host. And how do you interface with this foreign brand? And hopefully there will be some interesting conversations to spark some ideas how it works for you, something that's of interest for you in your everyday, work life. Also, trying to reach not just experienced people, but people who are just getting started out. Somebody who's trying to navigate being in the auto industry or any other industry in a more international capacity, working together with people from other cultures and trying to figure out how does that work? How can they be effective within that sphere? So let's also talk about autoethnography. What is it? If I'm the autoethnographer, surely there has to be something called autoethnography. Technically, there is. There is officially a type of sociological research called autoethnography. It's always spelled as one word. I have taken the liberty to separate it into two words because I'm focusing on the auto industry. However, the approach of autoethnography that I'm taking is very similar to let's say, the true autoethnography. And what is that? Well, the word auto in that case is like autobiography. It's a study of the self. And what autoethnography does is it literally looks at the self of a person who is in a culture, looking at the traditions, the norms, the customs, the communications, and everything that goes along with a culture, and figures out what is their place in it? How do they fit into that big picture? And that's why I thought it was so exciting when I came upon this concept of autoethnography, which is exactly what I want to do. I want to explore different cultures around the world in conversations, listening to people telling their stories about what they did in different circumstances around the globe. and working with different brands, different companies, and different people and cultures along their own personal journeys. So autoethnography is this study, and this is exactly the route that we're going to take, having these conversations with people. We're going to target here having a conversation with very interesting guests from different brands, from different countries, from different locations where they're currently located around the planet on a weekly basis. We're going to try to target having episodes that are about 30 to 45 minutes long with those guests. I will also, throughout the week, have one, possibly two additional episodes where I can convey some of my experiences. And let me give a little bit of an introduction to myself as to what my experiences have been. So I was born in Germany. I immigrated to the United States when I was quite young, not even quite 4 years old. And I always knew from the beginning that I was a little bit different from my American friends. We celebrated holidays differently. We had different traditions. We had different, I guess, household rules of things we could or could not do at home that were just very different from my friends. And so I grew up being very aware that people from different places are very different from each other, even if you look very much the same. There's something inside that ticks and thinks and calculates things in a different way. So I grew up that way. Simultaneously, while I was still living in Germany and very, very small, I already learned all of the different brands, the logos on cars. So when my mother would take me to the playground in the town where I was originally born, um, we would pass through the parking lot of the playground, and I was already able to identify the logos on the Fords and the Citroens and the Renaults and the Mercedes Benz and the BMWs and so on, even at a very very young age. And I loved cars. I played with them when I was a boy. I had toys. I always had a car collection of scale models throughout my life. I try to always cut back that scale model collection periodically, but somehow it always manages to grow back. And I think many of you out there know exactly what I'm talking about. I'm sure you all have collections on the shelf somewhere behind you right now as well. Well, I turned both my personal culture as well as my love for cars into a 30-year career in the auto industry. I started with Mercedes-Benz. Mercedes-Benz was launching its factory in Tuscaloosa, Alabama area in 1996. I arrived there at that time to help launch the M Class, which was the SUV, the first generation of that SUV. Today, that vehicle has been renamed. It's the Mercedes-Benz GLE. After Mercedes-Benz, I worked for Chrysler. At Chrysler, which was at that moment in time in the early 2000s, a company that had merged together with Mercedes Benz under the name Daimler Chrysler. I was working at the global headquarters responsible for global volume planning for all of the countries that were not in the then NAFTA region. So this gave me a lot of exposure to speaking to people all over the planet, discussing their sales volume plan, production volume planning, and so on. From Chrysler, I had a wonderful opportunity to have my first expat experience, which was to move to Egypt with my young family. I had two young children at that time, and to live and work in Egypt for a little bit over 1 year as the managing director of Daimler Chrysler Egypt, where I was responsible for both the Mercedes Benz and the various Chrysler brands, including Jeep, Dodge, and Chrysler. After the company split, Daimler Chrysler, I opted this time to go with the Chrysler side. I thought that there could be a different sense of adventure, a different sense of development and learning, going with a company that at that time didn't have so many international thinking people within the organization. I thought I could contribute more to Chrysler after the separation than I could to Mercedes Benz. Well, the first thing the company did was to offer me the opportunity to move to Moscow. And so therefore I relocated to Moscow for Chrysler and I worked as the managing director of Chrysler Russia for 5 years. At the end of those 5 years, I had the opportunity to shift over and work for Volvo Cars. And I was the managing director for Volvo Cars Russia for approximately 2 years before heading back to the United States, which I used then as a base to lead the Latin America organization as Canada, essentially all the countries in the Americas minus the United States. This gave me a phenomenal opportunity to travel around and to visit much of Latin America. I had 22 countries under my purview, and I visited many of them, though not all of them, throughout my 4 years of leading that organization. Following my time at Volvo, I left the company and I started my own consulting company. That company is called Shiftgate Consulting. I still manage that company today. Shiftgate Consulting is active in various strategic sales, marketing oriented, commercial oriented consulting activities in the automotive industry. I did take a 6-month break working with my consulting organization to go and work for VinFast Automotive. VinFast Automotive is the electric vehicle brand located and started in Vietnam. It is a startup company. I had the opportunity to work at the executive level at that company and had a lot of exposure to the founder of the company and a lot of the talented young staff that they had, as well as the incredible breadth of international staff that they had at that point in time, who came in to help launch the company in the most successful way. After leaving VinFast, I went back into my consulting work, which is what I do today. And I continue to do my consulting, but I also made the decision to finally live out my dream, which is to share with more people what I find to be such an incredible thing, which is global culture and cultures around the world. And again, I wanted to put those all into context of the auto industry. It could really be any business, frankly, not just automotive, but how do people interact with each other in different parts around the world and how to do that successfully. Now, that being said, we're also going to have absolutely some cultural bloopers where people, either expats, have made really terrible mistakes from a cultural perspective. I know I'm guilty of that at least on a few occasions. And also, how do the local staff successfully or unsuccessfully manage their expat? I think there are some great stories in some of the conversations that we're going to have with some of our guests in the future. That's the auto ethnographer. That is auto ethnography, to look from a personal perspective at the culture and the tradition and the norms and the customs around us, and to put that into the context of the automotive industry, and to bring the world a little bit closer to everybody who has this fascination with either the auto industry or culture or a mix of the two. So that's our first episode, just an introduction. I hope that you'll join us again. The next episode that we feature is going to have a guest, and that will be announced in the nearest future who that guest is going to be. You'll find that on our YouTube channel, and we are available also on other podcast channels in case you want to listen audio only. Looking forward to seeing you again next time. Keep on driving. Thank you for joining us on today's journey. I hope you found the episode both informative and entertaining. Please remember to like and subscribe to the Auto Ethnographer and leave us a rating or comment. Please visit our website at auto-ethnographer.com. You can also follow on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn.